Have you ever envied someone who falls asleep instantly? No tossing, no counting, just calm? What if I told you that elite military units, Navy SEALs, use a simple trick to train their brains to rest on demand? Not in hours, not in rituals, but in minutes. Stress, anxiety, screen glare, obligations, they all scream at your nervous system that something might go wrong. So it locks into vigilance. Cortisol stays elevated. Sleep latency stretches on. You lie awake in survival mode, but you can override that. Let's start with a scientific insight. The body can't fall asleep when it thinks it's under threat. Adrenaline and cortisol block the switch into recovery. That's why stress, even from everyday life, disrupts deep rest. The Navy SEAL sleep technique attacks this problem directly. It's not meditation. It's not drugs. It's a 2-minute positioning and breathing hack that resets your nervous system. Here's the method. Lie flat on the floor. Elevate your legs onto a bed, chair, or couch at about a 90-120 degree angle, creating a Z shape with your body. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Relax your limbs. That's it. You might fall asleep in under 8 minutes even if you're stressed or sleep-deprived. Medical school plus 14 real simple plus 14 Tom's guide plus Tour New York post plus 3 Tom's guide plus 3 Tom's guide plus 3 Cleveland. ClinicInc.com Tom's guide plus 1 very well mind plus 1. Why does it work? Elevating your legs helps reduce blood pressure in your lower limbs, increasing circulation toward your core and brain. That sends a physical message to your body. You're safe. You can relax Tom's Guide New York Post. Combine that with slow, deliberate breathing, especially long, controlled exhales, and you activate the parasympathetic nervous system. That's your built-in recovery mode. Heart rate slows. Brain waves decelerate. Sleep becomes imminent. It's like flipping a switch in your biology that many never knew existed. Now imagine using this technique not just for naps, but before bedtime. What if you could tell your brain, whatever happened today, now it's time to rebuild? Several sleep experts note that this tactic doesn't replace regular night sleep. But when moments arise, a tough day, stress, racing thoughts, it gives your system a reset button. Very well mind plus 2 real, simple plus 2 New York, post plus 2. Let's walk through a scenario. Imagine you've had a difficult afternoon. Your mind races. You fake interest. You push through. Now, and hear this, pause, move to the floor, elevate your legs, lie still for 8 to 10 minutes. Breathe, let go. When you open your eyes, your body knows something shifted. Your mind feels clearer. Your mood stabilizes. That shift isn't in your imagination. It's biology. The same biology that Navy SEALs rely on when rest windows are precious. What if I told you the way you fall asleep tonight could determine how focused, resilient, and emotionally balanced you are tomorrow? What if there was a method designed not by wellness influencers or sleep product companies, but forged in the crucible of high-stress combat zones by Navy SEALs whose survival depends on clarity, calm, and peak cognitive performance? This isn't a productivity hack. It's a neurological tool, a pattern, a system. And when done consistently, it conditions your brain to shift into deep restorative sleep on command, rewiring your neural circuitry for optimal performance overnight. Let's first understand what sleep really is from a neuroscientific perspective. It's not passive. Sleep is one of the most metabolically active states your brain can be in. It's the time when your brain performs a full reset, clearing neurotoxins through the glymphatic system, consolidating short-term memories into long-term storage, regulating hormones like cortisol and growth hormone, and fine-tuning the circuits responsible for emotional control and attention. In fact, sleep is your brain's operating system update, and if that update is compromised, even by 20 minutes of delay or interruption, your cognitive bandwidth shrinks. Your ability to regulate emotion gets weaker. Your reaction time, attention span, and even your willpower diminish. So when Navy SEALs train to control sleep. They're not chasing rest. They're training their nervous systems to recover faster and operate at a higher cognitive frequency than the day before. Now here's where it gets compelling. One of the techniques taught in elite military training is called the 4-7-8 breathing method. It sounds simple, almost too simple. But the underlying neurobiology is profound. You inhale through the nose for 4 seconds, hold the breath for 7 seconds, and exhale slowly through the mouth for 8 seconds. It sounds like a relaxation technique, but what it's really doing is shifting your autonomic nervous system from sympathetic dominance, the fight or flight mode, to parasympathetic control, the rest and digest state. Every time you slow your exhale, you're sending a direct signal through your vagus nerve to the brainstem. We are safe. We are calm. We can shut down and rebuild. Now here's why this matters. Most people try to sleep while their brain is still in a high alert state. They're scrolling through bright screens, thinking through tomorrow's stressors, eating late, or watching fast-cut digital content that spikes dopamine. All of this floods the brain with norepinephrine and cortisol. You might be lying in bed, but your brain thinks it's standing in a battlefield. The 4-7-8 technique is how Navy SEALs tell their nervous system to drop the armor. They teach their brain to downshift, and they do it in real time anywhere. The military also teaches a reverse body scan method. It's not meditation, it's tactical. You begin with your feet and intentionally relax each muscle group. Feet, calves, thighs, hips, moving upward until you reach your face and jaw. This directs your brain's attentional spotlight inward, turning off external sensory awareness and reducing cortical arousal. This alone can induce sleep in under 2 minutes. But here's the kicker. Practicing this consistently wires your brain to associate the act of scanning with the onset of sleep. Just like Pavlov's dog salivated to a bell, your brain starts releasing sleep-inducing neurochemicals the moment the routine begins. And over time, something remarkable happens. You begin to shift your relationship with sleep. It's no longer a frustrating pursuit. It becomes a performance tool. Your brain, once conditioned to stay alert into the night, begins anticipating rest. You start falling asleep faster, staying asleep longer, and waking up clearer. This isn't just anecdotal. Brain imaging studies have shown that people who use structured wind-down routines exhibit increased activity in the anterior cingulate cortex, a region associated with emotional regulation and task switching, and decreased activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center. That means these protocols don't just help you sleep. They retrain your emotional responses and cognitive control systems during the day. But what's even more powerful is how quickly this rewiring begins. 3 nights. That's all it takes for measurable changes in cortisol levels and heart rate. Variability, key indicators of stress recovery and autonomic balance. Within 3 days of practicing these methods, many people experience a 30-40% reduction in sleep latency and a significant improvement in deep sleep quality. That means the brain is spending more time in the phase where growth hormone is released, where tissue repair happens, where learning is consolidated. And once the habit takes root, the benefits compound. Better sleep leads to better decisions. Better emotional control, more energy, more clarity. You don't just feel rested. You begin to act from a place of stability instead of reactivity. And from a neuroscientific standpoint, that's when real transformation begins. You're building a new feedback loop between your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for reasoning and planning, and your limbic system, which governs emotional response. This loop determines who you are under pressure, whether you break or bend, whether you react or respond. Now imagine stacking that kind of neuroplasticity every single night. Imagine training your brain the way Navy SEALs train for performance under chaos, not by doing more, but by recovering better, by mastering one ritual, one window of stillness that rewires everything. Sleep, when approached with discipline and Understanding is not downtime. It's not a luxury. It's the most powerful tool we have to sculpt the mind, the body, and the life we want to live. And it all begins in a dark room with a single breath. Now, imagine stacking that kind of neuroplasticity every single night. Imagine training your brain the way Navy SEALs train for performance under chaos, not by doing more, but by recovering better, by mastering one ritual, one window of stillness that rewires everything. Sleep, when approached with discipline and understanding, is not downtime. It's not a luxury. It's the most powerful tool we have to sculpt the mind, the body, and the life we want to live. And it all begins in a dark room with a single breath. Most people think of sleep as passive. You lie down, close your eyes, and hope for the best. But that's not how high-performance systems work. Navy SEALs don't hope for better sleep. They engineer it. They recognize something most people miss. Your brain can be trained to sleep. It's not about chance. It's not about comfort. It's about conditioning. And the science now supports what they've long known in practice. Sleep is plastic. It adapts. It responds. It can be shaped. The most critical window in shaping. That sleep is what we call the pre-sleep ritual. Those 30 to 60 minutes before you actually go to bed. Why is that window so powerful? Because it sets the internal state. It shifts the brain from externally driven attention, where it's reacting, to stimuli, screens, tasks, noise, to an internally focused, restorative mode. This is not just a mental shift. It's a full-body neurochemical cascade. And it begins with one thing: light. Light is the most powerful regulator of your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that governs your sleep-wake cycles. When your eyes are exposed to bright light late at night, especially blue spectrum light from screens, it sends a very clear signal to the brain. Stay alert. This inhibits melatonin release, elevates cortisol, and delays sleep onset. That means the emails you check, the Instagram scroll, the Netflix binge, they're not just distractions. They're biological disruptors. They delay your body's ability to enter recovery mode. But here's the leverage point. The reverse is also true. When you dim the lights, reduce screen exposure, and engage in calming behaviors, you're not just relaxing, you're actively shifting your neural state. You're nudging the brain toward parasympathetic dominance. This is the rest and digest state, marked by lower heart rate, lower blood pressure, increased vagal tone. It's in this state that melatonin gets released at the right time, in the right dose, and signals every system in your body to prepare for repair. Think of it like a descending staircase. Every choice you make in that final hour before sleep is either a step down toward deep rest or a step back up toward hypervigilance. The military leverages this understanding with ruthless precision. They teach their operatives to view sleep not as an end-of-day routine, but as a strategic transition. That's why you'll often find protocols around temperature control, cooling the room down to between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit, which mimics the natural drop in core body temperature that precedes sleep. That drop is not just a comfort factor. It's essential. It signals the hypothalamus, the part of your brain that governs hormonal balance, to initiate the sleep cascade. Without that temperature shift, the brain stays in a state of readiness. Then there's the power of pattern. The brain craves repetition. The more consistent your wind-down ritual, the faster your nervous system recognizes it as a cue for rest. SEALs might not have a typical bedtime, but they often follow a similar wind-down pattern regardless of the hour. Clean the gear, dim the lights, prep the space, and engage in brief breathwork or visualization. This repetition wires the neural circuit so tightly that the body begins to anticipate sleep before it even arrives. It's classical conditioning, like Pavlov's dog, but with neurochemical dividends. What's happening under the hood is fascinating. Your thalamus, The brain's sensory relay station begins to reduce its sensitivity to external input. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for logical reasoning and decision-making, starts to go offline, and the hippocampus, the brain's memory encoder, prepares to sort and consolidate the day's experiences. But none of this happens efficiently in a state of chaos. You must downshift. You must create friction between yourself and stimulation. That means no caffeine after 2 p.m. That means no emotionally intense conversations right before bed. That means, when possible, doing things that quiet the inner monologue, reading something light, journaling to externalize stress, or simply sitting in silence. And here's where it gets really powerful. When you train this pre-sleep ritual consistently, the gains don't just show up in sleep quality, they show up in learning, memory, emotional resilience, and immune function. During sleep, especially slow-wave and REM stages, your brain engages in synaptic pruning. It clears out irrelevant information, strengthens useful connections, and rewires circuits related to behavior, decision-making, and even trauma resolution. Sleep isn't a shutdown. It's a neural rehearsal. Your brain is sorting through patterns, identifying what to keep and what to discard, all while your conscious mind is at rest. The military uses this to their advantage. Imagine a SEAL needing to integrate complex new tactics, high-stress situations, and motor coordination, all within a 24-hour cycle. Without deep sleep, none of it sticks. But with a well-conditioned pre-sleep routine, the brain is primed to encode and replay those patterns overnight. It's like having a second training session. Only this one happens while unconscious. And it's just as real. So how do you take that same principle and apply it to your life? You simplify. You pick 1 or 2 cues and repeat them nightly. Maybe it's turning off all screens by 9 p.m. Maybe it's 5 minutes of box breathing in a dark room. Maybe it's stepping outside before bed to look at the night sky and let your mind shift from data to depth. The content of the ritual doesn't matter as much as the consistency. What matters is that your nervous system knows. This is the time to release, to exhale, to let go. And over time, with repetition, that cue becomes a trigger. That trigger becomes a habit. And that habit becomes a neurological signature, one that tells your brain, we've done the work. Now it's time to rest. Your brain doesn't shut off when you sleep. In fact, in many ways, it switches into a different gear. A gear designed not for output, but for restoration, rewiring, and integration. Think of it like this. During the day, your brain is in record mode. You're gathering information, solving problems, navigating emotions, taking hits, pushing forward. But at night, if given the right conditions, your brain enters edit mode. And this is where transformation begins. One of the most powerful phenomena that occurs during deep sleep is something called synaptic pruning. It's your brain's version of spring cleaning. During the day, as you learn new things, make decisions, or experience emotional events, your brain creates and strengthens neural connections. Some of these are useful. Others, noise, stress reactions, unhelpful loops, are not. When you sleep, your brain evaluates which connections to keep and which to cut. It's ruthless. And that's a good thing. Because what's left is a tighter, more efficient, better wired system. Sleep doesn't just make you feel rested. It sharpens the brain for the next day's challenges. And then there's neuroplasticity, the ability of your brain to change, adapt, grow. You want to rewire habits? You want to respond better under pressure? You want more focus, more calm, more drive? That rewiring happens when you sleep, but only if you're getting the kind of sleep that allows for it. Light, fragmented sleep doesn't give you this. It's like expecting muscles to grow while only half finishing your workouts. You need deep sleep. You need REM. You need uninterrupted cycles that allow your brain to move through its natural rhythm of repair. Now here's where the science gets even more exciting. There's a system in your brain called the glymphatic system. It functions like a nighttime cleaning crew. During deep sleep, cerebrospinal fluid flows more freely around your brain, clearing out metabolic waste and toxic byproducts, things like beta amyloid, which is linked to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. This doesn't happen during the day. It only happens at night. When you sleep deeply, you're not just recovering energy. You're literally cleansing your brain. You're creating the biological conditions for long-term cognitive health, clarity, and resilience. This is why elite performers don't treat sleep as optional. They treat it as part of their protocol, on par with training, nutrition, and mindset. They understand what most people miss. The quality of your sleep shapes the quality of your output. You can't out-hustle chronic sleep debt. You can't think clearly or react quickly if your brain hasn't had time to regenerate. You may be moving fast, but it's like sprinting through fog. And if you're in a high-pressure role, first responder, athlete, entrepreneur, this matters even more. Because sleep is when your emotional circuits get rebalanced. The amygdala, which governs fear and threat response, becomes hyperactive when sleep-deprived. The prefrontal cortex, which helps you regulate, assess, and respond with strategy rather than reactivity, becomes less effective. That means you're more likely to snap, to spiral, to feel overwhelmed, simply because your brain didn't get the recovery it needed. But when you sleep well, when your body cycles through slow wave and REM in uninterrupted harmony, your stress response calibrates. Your problem-solving gets sharper. Your emotional regulation becomes more fluid. You don't just feel better, you operate better. Your nervous system becomes your ally, not your enemy. And that brings us to memory. Your brain doesn't store memories in one place. It files them across neural networks like folders on a hard drive. During REM sleep, your brain consolidates these memories, linking patterns, drawing connections, embedding lessons. You're not just remembering facts, you're integrating skills, decisions, and experiences in a way that makes them usable. It's why sleep is essential not just for retention, but for performance. You can rehearse something 100 times, but if you don't sleep on it, your brain doesn't lock it in. There's a reason why elite military units obsess over sleep, not just because they need rest, but because they understand that sleep is a form of mental training. It enhances reaction time, decision-making under stress, and situational awareness. These are not abstract benefits. These are mission-critical functions. And they're not just for warriors, they're for anyone living in the real world, facing pressure, navigating uncertainty, or simply trying to be better tomorrow than they were today. If you've ever woken up from a night of deep sleep and felt more clear, more grounded, more ready, you felt this at work. That's your brain, fully optimized. But if you've ever dragged yourself through a day, foggy and irritable, snapping at people you care about, struggling to remember things you shouldn't forget, you've felt what happens when that neural reset doesn't occur. So the real question is, are you giving your brain the chance to upgrade every night? Because if you're not just losing sleep. You're losing clarity. You're losing progress. You're trying to level up using a nervous system that's operating on fumes. But you can change that. And the process starts not with hacks, but with consistency. Sleep at the same time every night. Wake at the same time. Cut caffeine 8 hours before bed. Cut screens at least 1 hour before. Lower your core body temperature with a cool shower or a cold room. Dim the lights. Get sunlight early in the morning to anchor your circadian rhythm. Every one of these actions isn't just a tip, it's a trigger. A way to cue your brain into doing what it's biologically designed to do. Because your brain wants to repair. It wants to grow. It wants to make you sharper, faster, calmer. But it can't do that while you're scrolling at midnight or living on 5 hours of fractured rest. You train it by honoring sleep. You train it by understanding that the transformation you're seeking is not just about what you do when you're awake. It's about what your brain does when you're not. The difference between someone who struggles to get through the day And someone who moves with sharpness, clarity, and calm often boils down to how they begin their night. Most people think sleep is just what happens when you get into bed and shut your eyes. But in reality, sleep is something you prepare for. It's not a light switch. It's a physiological transition. And the hour before sleep is the most critical training window for your nervous system. Your brain and body don't just magically drop into deep rest. They need signals, clear, repeated, and timed properly. Think of your nervous system like a plane preparing to land. It needs to descend gradually. Fast transitions create turbulence, fragmented sleep, racing thoughts, waking up in the middle of the night. But if you give your brain the right cues, it will glide into sleep with precision. You're not just trying to sleep more, you're trying to sleep better. And that begins with how you wind down. There's a biological reason why wind down rituals work. Your body relies on its circadian rhythm, an internal 24-hour clock that regulates everything from energy to hormone release to sleep drive. And one of the strongest cues for that system is light. In the evening, dimming light sends a clear message to the brain. Produce melatonin, lower cortisol, prepare for rest. Bright lights, on the other hand, tell your brain to stay alert, stay vigilant. You can't scroll through high-luminance screens at 11 p.m. and expect your brain to cooperate. But it's not just about light. It's also about the pace of your thoughts. In the hour before sleep, your brain is primed to reflect. If you're filling that space with stimulation, emails, news, constant notifications, you're teaching your nervous system to stay reactive. That reactivity doesn't shut off when the screen does. It lingers in your circuitry. And it shows up at 2 a.m. when you wake with your heart pounding for no clear reason. That's your amygdala, your emotional alarm system, still on high alert, because it never got the signal that it's safe to rest. So what do you do instead? You create a ritual, a pattern, a familiar sequence that tells your brain and body, it's time to let go. It could be a short walk in the dark, a cool shower, journaling, breath work, reading fiction under soft light. The key is repetition. When your nervous system begins to associate these activities with the onset of sleep, it learns to shift gears faster. You're training it, not just to fall asleep, but to fall into deeper, more restorative sleep, the kind that actually changes how you feel and function the next day. One of the most effective tools? Deliberate breathing. Slow, structured breaths, particularly protocols like physiological sighs or box breathing, activate the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the rest and digest system. It's the biological opposite of stress. And it's your best friend if you want to sleep like a Navy SEAL. Because even in the most chaotic environments, elite performers know that control begins with breath. When you own your breath, you regulate your internal state. You don't just manage stress, you shift out of it. Another critical cue is temperature. Your body needs to drop its core temperature by about 1 degree Fahrenheit to fall and stay asleep. That's why a slightly cool room, around 65 to 68 degrees, is ideal. Some people use cold showers or heat followed by cool air to signal this drop. It sounds small, but it makes a measurable difference in sleep onset latency, the time it takes to fall asleep, and in the depth of your first sleep cycles, which are key for brain recovery and hormone regulation. And perhaps one of the most overlooked variables? Consistency. Your brain craves rhythm. Going to sleep at the same time every night, even on weekends, is like anchoring your biological ship in calm waters. Every deviation is like pulling the anchor and letting yourself drift into the storm of poor quality sleep. It doesn't have to be rigid, but it has to be regular. The more you train your system to expect rest at a certain time, the more it rewards you with faster onset, deeper cycles, and better emotional resilience the next day. Think of this like mental armor. You're building a buffer between the chaos of your day and the restoration of your night. You're not reacting to the clock. You're creating the internal conditions that allow your brain to shift gears without friction. This isn't soft. It's strategic. Because when you train your brain to rest on command, you operate with a kind of power most people never experience. You're no longer dragging your body through days fueled by caffeine and willpower. You're operating from clarity, calm, and biological alignment. And when this becomes your baseline, everything changes. Your mornings start sharper. Your decisions feel cleaner. You recover from setbacks faster. You don't just feel better, you become better. Not through motivation, not through hacks, through nervous system alignment, through honoring the biology that underpins every thought, every emotion, every choice. Sleep isn't the end of your day. It's the beginning of your transformation. And the habits you build in the hour before sleep determine whether your brain will spend the next 8 hours healing you or hurting you. You get to choose. We often think of sleep as passive, as a time when the body powers down, drifts, and escapes. But the truth is, sleep is active. It's a neurochemical reset. It's a hormonal recalibration. It's your brain clearing out toxins, consolidating memory, strengthening learning, and building emotional resilience. Every hour of deep quality sleep is like compound interest for your health, your focus, and your potential. And how well that process unfolds, how well you sleep, is not a mystery. It's the result of repeatable, trainable patterns. It starts with intentionality, not just deciding to sleep but preparing for it, like a soldier preparing for a mission, like a pilot preparing for takeoff. High performers don't leave their nervous system to chance. They train it. And the science is clear. You can influence your autonomic state, your brainwave activity, and your hormonal readiness through very simple actions. Breath, light, temperature, routine. These aren't small details. These are signals. Powerful evolutionary signals that tell your body, it's safe now. You can shut down. You can recover. You can heal. The reason this works so powerfully isn't just about comfort. It's about control. You're reclaiming the steering wheel of your physiology. You're not just hoping for better rest, you're creating the conditions for it. When you control your environment, your behavior, your cues, you send a loud and clear message to your nervous system. And your body listens. Every single time. Imagine waking up not groggy, but sharp. Not anxious, but centered. Imagine stepping into your day with full access to your attention, your decision-making, your emotional flexibility. That's not fantasy. That's what happens when you treat sleep as a performance enhancer. When you stop seeing it as time off and start seeing it as training. You're not just recovering from today, you're training for tomorrow. It doesn't take expensive gadgets. It doesn't take radical schedules. It takes ownership. Repeating a few key actions every night, at the same time with the same intent, can literally reshape the quality of your internal life. You're building a habit loop, and your nervous system thrives on those loops. They give it rhythm, predictability, safety. And in that safety, your brain stops scanning for threat. It starts repairing, growing, building capacity. The transformation is subtle at first. But then one day, you'll notice you're calmer under pressure. Your memory is sharper. You're more emotionally available to the people around you. You make better choices, faster. You feel aligned. And that alignment becomes your new baseline. This isn't hype. It's biology. You already have the tools. They're built into you. You just have to use them with consistency, with awareness, and with intention. So tonight, treat your wind down like the ritual it is. Dim the lights, breathe deliberately, respect the rhythm, and when your head hits the pillow, know this. You're not just going to sleep. You're training your brain to be better, stronger, clearer, one night at a time.